Some parts of control engineering are honestly not as exciting as other parts. That's just a reality of pretty much any job. One of the really important but perhaps less interesting aspects of wiring up a control panel is the ability to effectively label the wires and connection points. Labeling is such a big industry just by itself that you can see whole categories of label printers, wire markers, wire labelers, and they serve a very specific purpose of matching the wires and the connection points to a schematic so that an engineer can not only read the schematic and read the devices in the field, but connect both together and understand the big scope of where all the signals are going. So there's a couple of examples of how this labeling can take place. One example is attaching the labels directly to a wire itself. Sometimes this can be done with small plastic housings and zip ties. We create a label affixed to the front of a small plastic block, and then it's zip tied either to a coiled up wire or a long piece of cable. And then at either end, we can look at that cable and understand what's going on. Sometimes the sleeves are shrink wrapped around the wire so that it permanently stays in place without the extra bulk of the wrapper and the zip tie. We can sometimes even print directly on the cable itself. That's often the way you'll find it coming from a manufacturer. Like if you've ever rewired a three-phase motor, very often the wires themselves have the wire T numbers labeled directly on them. For terminal blocks, we have nowhere to be able to zip tie our connector to, and we have nowhere to stick a label because the sides of this terminal block will be covered up by other terminal blocks next to it. So instead, special terminal block labels can be clipped right to the front of these, whether you're looking down at a control cabinet or you're looking up at a control cabinet. Either way, we should be able to attach the labels properly so that they can be read and evaluated very quickly. Sometimes we can get pre-printed ones, like in this case, it's a number 10. So an entire row of blocks will be numerically ordered. Sometimes, in the case of this, it's labeled as FU3, the third fuse in a setup. If that's a custom label, we can custom print with ink onto that label and then generate that label that we can attach to the front of the terminal block. These come in all shapes and sizes, and every manufacturer of terminal block is going to supply the right labels for labeling on the fronts or sides or even at the top and bottom of a terminal block. There's all sorts of ways that we need to be able to creatively label it, but the whole goal of this process is not to make your system work better, it's to make your system easier and more efficient to locate the problems and the spots that we need to find as quickly and efficiently as possible. That minimizes downtime, and in the end, it saves a whole lot more money than it actually costs for these tiny little plastic labels in the beginning.